You're listening to the Pulled by the Root podcast.
Welcome to Pulled by the Root. I am Amy Hansen, sitting in with Elle Clausen. We are happy to have Liz Brownell here with us today. Liz is a mother, wife, teacher, artist, and adoptee living in upstate New York with her husband Kurt and their teenage children. What started as a curiosity and an effort to thank her first mother led to the sad discovery that she would never have a chance to meet her. As Liz navigated the fog, she found two half-sisters and some other extended family along the way. Liz is beginning to collect and refine stories from people touched by adoption for her upcoming sabbatical, where she will explore the maternal mystery more deeply and create a body of work intended to foster conversations that exist between adoptees and their families. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So I know you put a submission in with Heidi, and there were some things in there that kind of touched a little bit about your story. So we would love for you to start wherever, maybe why you were adopted or the story behind that, and just go from there.
Sure. So I think the question that I most often get when I tell people I'm adopted is like, oh, when did you find out? And I never knew a time when I didn't know that I was adopted. So my parents adopted me when I was about 10 months old. And I knew my earliest memory is my mom just playing with me and discussing how she couldn't have me, so another woman had me and gave her to my parents. So that was, I just always kind of knew adoption was who I was, what I was. Everybody was cool with it. My mom was the oldest of 9 kids. So her youngest brother had passed away when he was quite young, like 5 years old. And my grandfather on my mom's side, would always say, like, you were the gift because I was born the same day as that son that they lost. So it was like this very sort of serendipitous, my whole life kind of, it was like, you were the person who was supposed to be a part of this family. So it breaks my heart sometimes to hear some of the stories that you guys tell and the things that happen. But I just grew up knowing that I was an adoptee and my brother was adopted, and there was some holdup. So we would go visit him in foster care. So I knew what foster care was. I knew that I had been in foster care, and really just had a really great parents that raised me well. And then they went through their own troubles when we were teenagers and ended up divorcing, and it was kind of ugly, and I won't get into those details today, but that kind of threw me for a loop, but still kind of was just like, whenever I would think of my biological mother, never thought about my biological father, I would just think, gee, I would really like to thank her for choosing to have me, and I'm pro-choice, but for trying, because my mom also told me that she had tried to raise me and that she was living with her parents. This was the story I was told. She was living with her parents. She was trying to raise me. She couldn't do it. And so she gave me up. So that was the only story I knew. And then fast forward, I don't know how many years, and I had my first child in 2005. And the minute I was ready to leave the hospital, I completely lost it. And I was like, maybe I'm just like my mother and I can't do this either. And so that opened like this space in me that was like the first time I ever was like, am I those people, that person, I guess.
I find that so interesting that all of a sudden you wondered if you wouldn't be able to mother, that you had inherited that. And, I don't know what year you were born, but a lot of, at least baby scoop era, there was a real sense of, now I've forgotten the word, eugenics, where it's the blank slate theory, where if you put this child in a nice family, right, who did things in the right order, not premarital sex, all this sort of stuff, that they will grow up like that instead of be fallen, if you will. And that
Yeah.
you actually wondered that that breaks my heart for you. And
Well, thank you.
how did you, like, when you got home, what was it like then?
Well, here was my real saving grace was my friend Susan, who was the mother of 5 and worked with me, was a maternity nurse. And she said to me, as soon as you go into labor, call me and I'll be there the whole time. And we worked it out with my doctor. So she was the one there when I was getting ready to leave. And she looked at me and said, you absolutely can do this. And you're going to call me every day at 4:00 and we're going to get through this. And so she really was that voice of reason when I felt like I couldn't. Now, I'm not going to say it was like a perfect first year of having a baby. There was a lot going on, and I was just trying to keep a human alive and not really. It wasn't until years later that I really was like, wow, that was the first kind of cracking of the shell.
I know for a lot of people, adoptees, when they have their first child, they get this kind of maternal, like almost, I know nothing about my history now. I don't have anything to share with my child. And you become this overprotective, kind of, maybe I should look, maybe I should try to get medical history. Did you have any of those things, or were you more thinking like what you had maybe known growing up, that you were put into this family because your birth mom wasn't capable to take care of you, that you were thinking wow, there's this connection?
Yeah, I don't really think so. Like, again, so my mom, like my mom who raised me, my mom, um, was extremely maternal, like stayed home with us and then only went back to work when she got divorced, was a first grade teacher. So while I was pregnant, she was like, I will stay home and take care of this baby. So this baby, I'm going to retire. So I didn't really I was pretty content in that situation. It wasn't until my son had some medical issues that I was like, oh, maybe I should find out if this is a thing. And again, you're busy. And so then I was like, I don't have time for that. I'd look up a few things here or there. That was it. But it wasn't until like 2018 when my dad's wife was really ill and I was helping to take care of her. And then she passed. And then my dad fell really ill and he was staying with us and we kind of mended our relationship. That was when I was like, kind of more, I could see, like, I was like, okay, there's all of these things have been leading up to this thing. And if you don't look now, when are you going to look? Because like your parents are getting older. We think your biological mother was younger. So she's getting older too. Maybe you should go look for her. And that was the first time that I really was like solid, like, okay, as soon as he's better and we get him on his way, let's do this for real. So that was really the first time I was really serious about it, I would say.
Okay.
So is that when you started looking in earnest? And how did you do that then?
So I started with 23andMe. And I thought, I'll just throw some DNA out there, never really thinking too much about it. When it comes back, I'll see what happens. And the results came back, and it was mostly just cousins. And so I started reaching out, and one of them was like, I'm going to figure this out. We had both put in our DNA like at the same time, and she and her daughter were in North Carolina, and they were like, we're going to figure this out. So we started going through all the family members. It's funny because my brother hasn't followed up, but her dad and her brother look so much like my brother. Like it was startling. And so I was like, we're going to have to check that out too, right? Like because my brother came from a similar area, but he's not ready and I would never force him at all. So we'll keep pretending that we're related. That's all right, by blood.
So 23andMe, which I did too, you had a bunch of connections, and
they were all cousins and further out though.
Okay. But the one cousin wanted to figure it out, and did they?
So we kind of scratched the surface. We came up with some names, and it's funny because her Aunt Gertie, said, yes, there's a Borello who had 2 baby girls and gave them both up for adoption. And I said, no, that's not my mom. My story is my mom was really young, got pregnant at work, had me, and couldn't take care of me. So there's no way there's two babies. But that was my mom. Like the hair on my neck is standing up as I even think about it. So this is where I might get teary. So, okay. So fast forward, it's 2020, March 11th. I was flying down to visit my best friends. We were driving down to North Carolina from Virginia, and I'm sitting in the airport, and my mom had been like, oh, I don't know if you should go. There's, the pandemic. I'm like, I'm fine. And then I get to Boston, and like, there's nobody in the airport, and all the flights are canceled. And I'm like, oh God, I just want to get there. And so it came up on my phone, oh, you have matches. And there were two that looked like they were a little bit closer, but I know nothing about DNA. If you've looked at both, they look totally different. So I was like, oh, I'll just worry about it later. And spent the weekend with my girlfriends. Well, I decided not to get back on a plane. So they drove me halfway home and my husband picked me up. And so I'm looking and I'm like, oh, this one person might be like a sister to my mom. And then this other person looks like another first cousin. I'm just going to send her a message and see what I can find out. Send her a message. And by the time I got home, it was March 17th. My phone rang and it was Amy, the person I had reached out to. And she said, hi, how are you? I said, good. How are you? I'm not looking for anything. I'm just really trying to figure out where I came from and don't want anything. And she's like, oh yeah, I know. It's okay. And like the sweetest person ever. And then she says to me, are you sitting down? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, you might want to sit down. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, do you know who I am? And I'm like, yeah, you're Amy. I don't know. You're like my cousin. I think you're on my mom's side. And she's like, no, I'm your half sister. And I was like, that siblings had, for some reason, never crossed my mind. So I was like, whoa. And then she was like, and I hate to be the person that has to tell you this, but our mother is deceased. And I was like, whoa. She's like, yeah. And so it turned out that our mother, as the story goes, most people say that they think that she took her own life about a year after she gave me up.
Oh,
so
no.
Yeah.
Oh, Liz.
I know.
So this sister is older then?
Yeah. So Amy is 5 years older. So Shirley's our mother.
Okay.
So Shirley had Amy 1968 and then me in 1973. So with the first baby, she was, as far as we can tell, kind of sent away and like forced to give the baby up.
As so many were, yes.
Right. And then, nobody could understand why she was still crying. Right. Like you hear those kind of things and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because women are just known to be able to give up children and get over it.
Yeah.
Right?
And then the kids, like my cousins that I met, they'll say, oh, like Shirley just cried and cried like for days. So it's really quite heartbreaking. So then when she had me, she wanted to keep me. And as far as I can tell, very, well, first of all, there was a pandemic and everybody's kind of older. So seeing people wasn't really something that I could do right away. So we've had like some phone conversations. She does have 3 sisters that are still living who they're about an hour or so away, and I'm trying to arrange to meet them. But there's a lot of secrecy in the family. And the one admitted that she tried to adopt me and the social worker talked her out of it. And it was just heartbreaking because she just, started sobbing and was like, it's the biggest mistake of my life. I should have adopted you. And I'm like, no, like, please don't let that be another minute, because I honestly, my parents were fantastic. Like, you had children that you needed to take care of. They needed you. But that was kind of heartbreaking to me, like almost more so, it sounds weird, but almost more so than, that here's this woman who was sort of carrying this thing for a child that wasn't hers either,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know the circumstances on why your mom had to relinquish your sister and you?
No, and I'm trying to find that out. So I've been trying for a really long time between the county that I was in foster care in and um is it Catholic
Catholic
uh,
Charities?
yes,
Hmm.
trying to get information from them. But it's I did finally get a call back again this week, so we'll see if that goes somewhere. We're kind of in the phone tag stages, but I would like to figure that out. I've, thought about also looking in because I have my birth certificate now because in 2019, 2020 in New York, you could get your birth certificate. So it had my mother's name on it. So that kind of confirmed everything. And Amy, my older sister, same thing.
Okay. So in the state of New York, is it just you're able to get your original birth certificate, not anything from your adoption file?
Right. So you
Okay.
send in paperwork and they send
Hmm.
you your original birth certificate. But that only happened, January 1st, 2020,
Right. Yeah,
which
I
is
know my
crazy.
brother, I have an older adopted brother and same thing. He was adopted in New York. So he was able to find that and I was adopted in Indiana. So it's been 5 years, almost 5 years that they finally opened it, but I was also able to get my adoption file like that had intake forms and kind of like had a little bit more background into why I
Ooh.
was placed. So maybe that's something with the adoption agency you'll be able to, I don't know, but that would be a great thing if you could get your hands on something like that, just to fill in some more
Yeah,
pieces for you.
that's really what I want to do. I mean, what's funny is that my older sister Amy was the one who's like, "Let me see all your stuff. I'm going to figure out who your father is." Like she was like determined and she understood it all and she was like, "Do, do, do, do," like whatever, goes through this whole thing and she couldn't figure it out either. And then about 6 months later we were talking on the phone and she said to me, "Let me look at that list one more time." And we looked at it and she was like, "I think it's this family." And she was totally right. And I ended up finding he was also deceased. I found his obituary and it listed 4 children, 3 boys who I've not found, and then a girl of Lorton, Virginia, is what it said at the time. So, like, I, of course, like many people, and this would be my warning to people searching, and I don't know, what you guys think, but like, I was like, oh my gosh, so I can find her, and she's on Facebook, and I go, here's this, and I don't know what I was thinking. I figured he died in 2006. It was 2021 or whatever. I'm just going to send her a message and be like, "Hey, I'm looking. Is this your father?" You know, I have no, and within minutes, she messaged me back and was like, "That's my biological father. Why do you want to know?" And I was like,
Oh,
"Ooh." So I kind of told her what was going on. And she's like, "Can I call you?" And I was like, "Yes, you can." And so lo and behold, the minute I heard her voice, I was like, "That's my sister." Like
Oh,
we
oh,
interesting.
at
You
the end of the
sound,
conversation, yeah, she was like, "Can I tell you something?" I'm like, "I know what you're gonna say." And she's like, "You do?" I'm like, "Yeah, we sound exactly alike."
that's
It's
amazing.
crazy.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
really weird.
I'm in reunion as well. And I know it is, right?
It's
And
exciting.
my my birth mom, my first mom is what I usually say, has now often commented that when she answers the phone and there's just a hey, she has to think now, is it me? Is it my little sister? Is it her little sister? Because the
hmm.
three of us sound the same.
Wow.
And so I get that. That
It's
connection, like, did that feel like something in you to have a connection that was so, well, it's physical, but it audible, obvious, perhaps?
yes. It was like I can't even explain it. It was like I had never heard anybody who really sounded like my other sister does not sound like me, right? So just to hear her speak, although, maybe like we talk a little different, like our inflection is similar, our nasaliness is similar, like, you know,
Yes.
it was unbelievable. And it was kind of like, she was like, I'm going to take the test, but I'm pretty sure we're related. And I'm like, yeah, me too. So yeah.
Wow. Was she placed for adoption as well? Because what she referred to her dad.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it was a pretty complicated situation. I know she'll be all right with me just sharing sort of basics without details, but he had taken her from her mother, and her mother had to find her and bring her home, at which point her mother's husband adopted her because they couldn't find our father
Okay.
for many, many years. So she was raised by a father who is her father.
Thus,
So she had only known him when she was like
right.
up to 2 or 3 years old.
And that's why she referred to him as, that's my biological father.
Yes,
Gotcha.
because she had tried to reach out to him and it had not gone very well.
Gotcha.
So I kept saying to my sister, Amy, the older sister who lives, my mother's daughter, who lives in North Carolina, if I can get a flight down there for $200, I'm coming down. I'm coming down. I'll get a hotel. I'll come down. We'll get to know each other. So finally, in October of 2021, I got a flight, and I was like, all right, I can get a flight on this weekend. Let me know the closest, hotel. I'll just come for the weekend, whatever. And she was like, no, you have to stay with me. And I was like, no. What if you don't like me? What if I don't like you? Like, let's just keep it. And she was like, no, I won't have it any other way. You've got to stay with me. So of course, me being me, I was like, all right, whatever. Okay, I'll stay. So then it's the night before I'm going to leave to fly down there. And I said to my husband, oh my God, what am I doing? And my best friend lives like 5 hours away. So I called her and I was like, if you need to come and get me from Charlotte, can you do that? She was like, oh, yes, I'll be there in a heartbeat. So I'm crying in the line to get on the plane. I'm scared and excited. And I get off the plane in Charlotte and Amy's standing there. And I mean, I'd seen pictures of her. We had done this and I had talked to her. And the minute I hugged her, I just knew everything was fine. We just kept saying, it's like when we're together, I feel like our mother is there with us.
Amazing.
It was unlike anything I have ever experienced. In fact, we were supposed to get a reading because people were still doing things online. And it was the day I was leaving. And the morning of the reading, the medium called and said, I have the worst migraine I've ever had in my life, and I'm not going to be able to help you. And so Amy hung up the phone and told me, and we just laughed because we were like, oh, there's Shirley. She's been blowing it up all night long, and now we got to wait. So
that's right. And it's double the information that she would have to be working with, right? With these two sisters who found each other. That's hilarious.
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
Oh.
So what's it like now, a few years later, after all of that and the searching and the reunion? What's happening in your head and your heart now?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I think I said in that letter that I sent you, I feel like I'm out of the fog, but I think I'm going up and down the sort of rolling mountains from time to time, which is why I've decided to do this sabbatical. And to just my work has always been about family and mostly maternity, and how maternity isn't strictly biological, like my artwork, right? So I really want to take a deeper look at all of the things that made my biological mother and all of the sort of complementary things from my mother, who we were dying laughing yesterday. I was talking to my mom. She gave me my baby book, right? Because she's like, oh, this will really help you. And everything from the day I came home, cried for 25 minutes, it finally calmed down, and she has everything very methodical. But I was dying laughing because my mom's the oldest of 9, and you were never sick in her house. You were never sick, right? In our house ever. And so my mom literally wrote at the end of November in my baby book, has had a cold since September. Oh. And we were like, she's like, you didn't have a fever. It was just a cold. I go, Mom, it was allergies.
Oh. But she didn't get you to the doctor to check it out.
No, she's fine. It's just a cold. That's how my mom is about everything.
It's fine.
You're fine. Yeah.
Just suck it up.
Yep.
That's hilarious. So
So
how
yeah.
does I don't love this question often, so I can't
Mm,
believe I'm about to go there. It's just that Amy and I were also talking a little earlier about how often many of us, anyway, our adopting parents are supportive and say they will support, and then the moment there is reunion, it all falls to pieces. They can't
yeah.
quite handle the whatever it is that is happening, the fact that you are connected to somebody biologically and they aren't, or and how that all manifests in different ways. And I said to Amy, it's not a hypothetical question anymore. Like I could start taking numbers, tick, 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 right? How, and so the question I don't like is when somebody finds out I'm in reunion, usually a non-adopted person, and says immediately, what do your parents think? And I'm like,
Right.
I'm an adult. Ask me what I think. But
Yeah,
because
it's
so
a
many
very
of
weird.
us, yeah, but because so many of us do have issues afterward with our adopting parents, how is that going for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I ran into something really different, I think, partially because my parents, my biological or first parents, were both deceased. So, I definitely had that guilt and that worry of I didn't want to upset my parents. Like I didn't say anything before I got or when I was doing the DNA test because I figured if nothing becomes of it, there's no need to make people upset. That I was definitely the pleaser and my brother was definitely the tester, right? So we played the two roles, just like they say will happen. So I was really worried about that. Well, when I found out that um I still can't believe this. When I found out that my biological mother was deceased, we weren't seeing my mom because it was COVID. And like I literally had just been traveling. So the only way I had to talk to my mom was by phone. Um, and so I called her and I told her because I couldn't not. Um, and my mom, you have to know her. She really is a very beautiful, lovely, wonderful person, but she'll just say stuff, right? So she was like, oh, well, that makes it easy, you know? So, right? Like, well, that makes it, well, that's good. Oh, you know, like, and I could understand that, right? Like, that makes
Sure,
sense.
sure,
And
but Mom, you said that out loud.
yeah, right, right. And but as time has passed and as I've gotten to know my sisters, like both of my parents, because right, they're both now married to other people and very happy. They've both, shown interest in wanting to meet my sisters when they come here, or right, like so they've definitely warmed up to it. They weren't. My mom's not the type of person that's going to ask you like tons of questions about your life anyway. But she would ask me things about Amy. And like before I was going to visit Amy, she'd be like, you're going to have to let me know and you're going to have to send me pictures. So she was very much a part of it. And so when I hear you guys talk about stories, it's so hard as a parent to imagine your adoptive parents who clearly loved you having that kind of a reaction. And even though it is a very personal thing, like something that they're not over, their own insecurity, man, does that add a whole other layer of trauma
Mhm.
to the situation. So I've been very lucky in that light, but it could have been different had my biological parents been alive. I don't know.
That's really nice. I'm glad. I'm glad for you. Because I think you're right. When adopting parents react like that is because no one has gone to therapy for this, right? No one
Right.
has worked through their infertility trauma or the miscarriage trauma or what have you. And we just expect to fill a hole, a grief in our hearts with something. You could go shopping, you could do all these things, or if in this case what you wanted was a child, the child fixes it, but it doesn't, right?
Right. Right.
So I'm glad you had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel very fortunate. Um, and in some ways for myself too, right? Like, because what does that look like, meeting a biological mother who doesn't want a relationship or who really wants a relationship? There's so many missing pieces, but I know that the foggy part of me is the part where I think I don't fully accept. I'm looking at this little thing. So this is my little book that I made where I write little stuff about my mother, like when I'm having like weird little things. So like I keep this little book here that's just
Oh.
like a little sketch, like,
Oh, I love that.
did you love something that I loved? Or, right? Or
Hmm.
like I wrote, after I saw Amy, when we're together, we can feel you. Like, so I feel like I have to sort of dig where I've always dug in my own work and in the universe, and just listening to get a better understanding of who Shirley was. And I'm really hoping, I'm working right now with, the nice thing is the one aunt who I'm talking to on the phone, she lived next door and helped take care of me. So the aunt that I lived with Shirley is deceased. But this other aunt who was helping to care for me, um, I think she can tell me more of that story. It's just getting her to that level of comfort. So she's on my list of people to interview this summer. So I'm hoping.
Yeah. Oh, I hope
Yeah.
so too. And it does take time. Just 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, I was at my first mom's place, and we've been in reunion for, is it 3 years? But suddenly, this visit, we talked about the adoption thing for hours at a time, and that had never happened before because I know she's still hurting, and I don't want to push it, but the aunt is hurting, right? You don't want to push it. It needs to trickle out as they
Yes.
can.
Right.
Yep. And I just keep saying to her, when you're ready, when you're comfortable, like she's moving right now. So I was like, even if you want me to move boxes and you just want to talk, and I can clean and I can put stuff away, and right. But when you're ready, you don't have to entertain me. We can meet at a restaurant. Like, there's no pressure, but
Yeah.
she has to be ready. And I mean, she has a lifetime, they have a lifetime of secrets in that family.
Yeah. And I'm
So
sure
I may
she
never
also,
dig through.
yeah. No, but I also think she probably, in her heart too, even though your mom's not here anymore, has a sense of loyalty of like what she can truly disclose, right?
Yes.
And and also probably wants to have your mom be seen in a positive light for you. And there might be parts that are uncomfortable, and she might just not be
Hmm.
ready to share those with you just yet, because it does sound like
Yeah.
there are some, like you said, secrets and some things that just aren't being talked about. So I think the way you're being patient, and I mean, you're very positive, and you're with the right attitude. I
Right.
think in time that definitely will. Hopefully the cards will fall in your lap the way you want. Because it's that information. It's the little pieces of information that seems so trivial to many people who
Yeah.
aren't adopted, right? And just to get a little glimpse into the world of your mom is just so heartwarming to you and so precious. So I really hope you can get that from her.
Oh, I hope so too. And yeah, and just everyone I've met so far has been really quite nice.
Great.
And so yeah, I'm hopeful, and I'm excited to do work with other adoptees, because I think the biggest thing, and with people just touched by adoption, um, because I think the biggest thing for me is like getting people to talk about being adopted without it being something that shouldn't be talked about, and to know that they're not alone, I think
Right.
is so, so important. So I teach at a community college, and I know that there's so many kids. One woman in particular, like my second year at the school, we kept ending up in the same place all at the same time. And we were similar in age. She was a student. I had just started teaching. And it turned out that she had just given up her baby, and it was an open adoption. And so we kept bumping into each other. And then we had this conversation, and it was like she knew she could tell me. And so, you know, it just was such a beautiful thing to me to see this beautiful human who so selflessly gave up this child. It was trying to be a part of the child's life. It gave me a whole different perspective. So I'm hoping that within our community, I can start to bring people together to talk about it so that people don't, it breaks my heart when you guys interview people who the late, what do you call it?
Yeah, late
Oh,
discovery adoptees.
LDA, yes.
Yes. I can't imagine that.
Mm-mm.
Where everybody knew but them.
It's really, really frightening. And I can't imagine the way that must feel like
No.
just having the rug ripped right out.
And what I find interesting about conversations as adopted people who knew we were and LDA individuals is often we have assumptions about each other's experience. And often an LDA will think, well, you're used to it, right? You're used to the fact that you aren't of these people or don't look like them or whatever. And assuming that being used to it must make it easier than the rug being, as you said, pulled out from under you. On the other hand, when you grow up, the only one who looks like you, the only one who's good at the things that you're good at, all in a huge family, like you said, if we can talk about it finally, because nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
done. It was for the best. And there you have it. Moving
Yeah.
on.
Exactly. So I think that's fantastic that you are looking to pull, stories together of everyone touched by adoption, because the more communication, the more everyone can speak their own truth, their own journey, because sounds like you had fabulous adoptive parents and you're close to them, and even though you still had that like guilt, like, oh gosh, I don't want to tell them because if nothing comes of it, I won't bother them. Right. So we're always still putting them first. However, just we all have so many different experiences, but we still have that common ache, that, part of us that just seems to be missing, that the more and more, no matter how our circumstances were, the more and more people who can talk about it, to just understand, because we need to make it better for people who are adopting, right?
Right.
If their adoption's not going to go away, but I feel like if we can not make it a secret, if we don't need to hide things, if we don't need to say like, your biological family, they were poor, they were young, they couldn't care for you, they wanted two parents. In this world, our families are made up of so many different things now, right? So it's a matter of just being accepting and being opened. And I think the work you're going to do is going to be fantastic for that. So
art heals a lot.
That.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
Well, I would like to know about the project that that you are putting together. We're all getting up there and you're sitting in your studio and I can see it. I'm like, okay,
I know.
So what's the actual project?
So the actual project is that I started a series when I learned about my mother that I'm calling the Divination series, where I would just kind of start to put together elements that sort of spoke to me. I do a lot of mixed media work, telling the story sort of through time and through like the vision of, like, the one right behind me is kind of like carrying the burden of knowing like that there's like all of this beauty, and it's not done yet, but you can kind of see like, right?
Yes, bring it close. Thank you.
Yes. So the idea of sort of carrying the burden, I don't know. Does that work?
Yeah, can see it. Oh, I wish our people listening could see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and once I get things rolling, I can share like information with you all, but I also co-run this space called Art Space 36 in Canandaigua, and I do a lot of community outreach work. So I'm going to be holding monthly sessions that it's going to start out just for adoptees in September, and we're going to advertise it around the college and try to get as many people to come as possible, where I will have like a piece with me and like a bunch of supplies and art making stuff, and just invite people to sort of do like a visual meditation with me. And so to kind of think about kind of how they view themselves as being born, as being a part of a family. What does that family look like? And just getting people, what I've learned through the other groups that I'm doing is when people are just making stuff like they're 5 again and not thinking about things, they can let a lot of stuff kind of simmer and then talk about it productively. So my hope is to kind of start with that and then open it up to like anybody touched by adoption, creating these opportunities for people to come and make and think about what family means too, right? Like, because you can have a biological family that can be an absolute nightmare and they can abuse you and treat you horribly. And then you can have people that aren't your parents come into your life and be your parents, not even adopted, right? So there's so many different things that family can mean. So really kind of helping people to change their mindset. You know, our brain has all those neural pathways and we can change the way that we process information. And you can do it through therapy, but then sometimes I think some of us, myself included, I mean, on my worst day, I can be probably the worst patient ever in therapy, right? Like I'm just not none of it's gonna come out today because I'm not feeling like I need to say anything. I have stuff to do, like I need to go. So just loosening people up, getting them to talk and engage and think about being adopted and how do they visually see that? Like what is the beauty in that gift, right? Because there's beauty in the gift, whether it's, you know, you got great parents or you got great genes or whatever, you know, there's got to be something that we can scratch the surface with and realize that we are enough. Because I think that's what I, as an adopted person, I think that's the thing that I've carried most of my life is I call it like this, there's this empty space, this little empty space that I didn't know was really there until I started to feel it be filled every now and again. And they were like these fleeting moments where I would feel like, oh, wait, I'm exactly where I'm, and then it would be gone. And that's what I felt when I met my sister Amy for the first time. And when I met my sister Liberty for the first time, and like I held them, it was that, and I was like, whoa, that's the feeling. So I don't know if that's my biological mother being around me, but I think as adoptees, we have that emptiness that can be filled maybe by a partner that we really love or our children. Other than that, it's just this kind of weird space. So let's make that space and then let's explore it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Oh, I love the idea of exploring that space because I think it's a ubiquitous sort of experience for adopted people, no matter how they express it. And I also think, yes, adoption's not going anywhere, but can we reinterpret? Do we need to be cut off from our original tree utterly so that we don't know even our ethnicity or, you know, all of those sorts of different things? The ownership that adopting parents can seem to have over even those who are very loving and things, but they needed to rename, they needed to have you accept their tree as your tree, and it's not. But and it's complicated. But since it is what it is, could we just explore that space? But I love the idea of including adopting parents in that to explore that space because I think, as I said previously, so often that empty space for them of family, they try to fill it without actually sitting in the grief pool and really working through it. I'm going to quote Alanis Morissette again, as I do
Ooh.
with boring regularity, but the only way out is through.
Yeah. Yes.
That's it. You can't ignore it. You can't pretend it's not there. You can't, because it is there. It's a big thing and it means a lot. And I think non-adopted people often will say, well, what does it matter? Well, because familiarity breeds contempt. You have all the information. Of course you think it doesn't matter. But if you didn't
Right.
have it, all of a sudden it matters.
Well, and it's always seemed weird to me that why do you not give medical records with children when they're adopted? I mean, that to me, especially in this day and age, is like, you're the only person, right? For 47 years, every time I went to the doctor, I said, I have no medical history.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's a young woman in particular, what medical history do they know of? Oh, I don't know. My parents are in the 40s. Everybody seems fine. But that treats things like as if they stay in a static state forever, whether it's
Correct.
medical or whatever. Things aren't static.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that exploring that space, I think is really important. I'm so excited to see what comes of that.
I hope we get all the people. I'm pretty good at persuading people, so I'm going to work on it. It's amazing to me the number of people I work with who are adopted. When all this came out, we were all getting our birth certificates. It was like, whoa, like it was pretty cool. So I'm going to lean on them first, and then we'll pull students in along the way and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, being with a group of adoptees is amazing. I we have like, Adoptees Connect. I'm not sure if you know that organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a local one that I've been going to very, regularly. And it's just a great, we get together once a month on a Saturday morning, and just to have that comfort of everyone getting it is just an amazing thing. There's not like anything. My family's always like, what did you do? I'm like, we just kind of hung out, but we all just got it. Like,
we didn't need to do anything.
We didn't have to explain. We didn't have to try to like make sense of it all, because we were all in the same boat. So I think what you're doing will be great. I mean, I would sign up if I was there.
Oh yeah, me too. I'd be so there, but I'm so far away. It's not even funny.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Am I allowed to ask you guys where you're in Vancouver right now?
I'm in Vancouver, in British Columbia. Yeah, right now. Just I'm taking a little writer's retreat, actually. Ooh, is why I'm here right now in my friend's apartment, who allows me to stay.
Yay.
But I live in a little ski town further in province usually. So it's a very different vibe. So yeah, very far from you. Amy, tell her where you are.
Yeah. I'm a little closer. I'm in just outside Chicago, northern suburb of Chicago. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, you guys are doing great work, and I hope that Heidi's feeling better. And I just can't tell you, as I've been going through this, listening to your podcasts, I learned so much from every single one of them. So thank you so much for the work that you guys do, and just for being who you are and continuing to find your way in reunion and navigate all the parts of it. It's just a beautiful gift that you share with the world. So thank you.
Thank you. That's so encouraging. And I don't know about Amy, but I just often feel these conversations could go on longer. Like we only take an hour, but we could just hit record, sort of like your meetings, Amy, with Adoptees Connect,
Right.
And people ask, what's going on? What did you talk about? Everything? Nothing? For a while we stared into space. I don't know. Because
yeah.
we just get it.
Exactly. Yeah. And we appreciate you taking the time to reach out, because again, your story is also going to touch people, and they're going to learn something from your story. And so it's so important to just keep our voices loud and get them out there as much as we can. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And maybe if nothing else, when we do one of these events, maybe I can figure out a way to get you guys to do like a virtual talk or something.
Yeah.
If you're ever interested.
That would be great. Oh, I love that. Also, our website has a space where we can put photography, art, poetry, things like that.
Oh,
maybe
cool.
when you have pieces that are ready, we could somehow get something on there.
Yeah.
For everyone to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Liz. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep us updated on how everything's going with your sabbatical work. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.